G'day. Thanks for tuning in. Whether you're watching this live or later, it's so good to have you join us. Tonight we want to explore the idea of disorientation and reality. And so as we go through our lives, we have these periods of time when we are disoriented from what we perceive to be reality. I had a moment a few years ago when there was a career path that I'd been moving along, and I think I'd probably given about 30 years of my life to this particular career path. And the organisation that I was working with at the time decided that they were going to head in a different direction. I felt like the area that I was focused on, which was actually youth and young people, and particularly those outside of the normal parts of that organisation, were going to be lost if they headed in this new direction. They offered me they extended to me a new offer, and I couldn't in all good conscience say, look, I'm going to take this, because I knew that it was going to go in a different direction. And so I said, no, look, thanks for the offer. I'm going to go in a different direction. At the time, I did not know what that direction was. I did not know. And as I tried to explore my different options, I came to the conclusion that this part of my life that I'd given 30 years of myself to had come to an end. And there were a couple of other opportunities in a similar area, and I had this sense that was not the right way to go. And I really felt quite disoriented, that I knew what to do here. I felt I was quite good at it. And we just headed off in a different direction, and I didn't really know what that was. It was quite disorienting. Perhaps as you're watching this, you've had a similar experience where you've invested part of yourself into something, and it might have been time. You might have invested some of your energy into this, emotional energy, sometimes intellectual energy, and you feel that for whatever reason that has come to an end. And perhaps if you have, you might want to comment that. Or if you're watching this with others, you might want to just pause now and just talk about those moments in our life when we have experienced something disorienting. I mean, do you have an experience that you've had that you feel like you could share that where you found quite disorienting?
Yeah, I think at some point in my life, it was probably, trying to think, about 13 years ago when I felt that, I was being led to leave the job that I was at. And I felt like God saying, do you trust me? And in that moment I was like, no, but I wanted that to be different and I wanted to trust him. So it took some time, but it was, I felt like, he was kind of saying, look back, you're never going back to maybe to that security of that kind of work and income and that kind of thing. And he was reminding me that it would always feel a bit unstable. And I guess, like you've said, disorienting. And at no point did he promise that I would move into a time when it would be full of comfort and certainty. So that was like a big thing, and I had to wrestle with that for a few days and then go, okay, not necessarily am I okay with it, but I'm going to trust you, God, and be okay with the disorienting, the chaos, the uncomfortability, I guess, of the life that then he was leading me into.
We had a friend this morning share that when he lost his wife of many years, that was completely disorienting. I think he actually had to rediscover who he was quite totally. And for some of us, that might be something that we consider trivial. Maybe you've had a bad day and then you've received some news that is disorienting. It might be a career move. It might be a relational move. But we go through these moments that are just disorienting, where we feel a bit bewildered about what's next. And we're going to draw some inspiration right now from the scriptures about a group of people who were quite disoriented, that they were quite bewildered. So I'm just going to read a short reading here. on Saturday evening, when the Sabbath, and in the Jewish practice, the Sabbath extended from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset. So this is probably late in the afternoon here. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so that they could anoint Jesus' body. And very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, who will roll the stone away? In your culture, you may have different burial practices. It may be that you practice cremation. I know my mum was cremated. It may be that you practice burial in the ground. In this particular culture, if you were rich enough, you found a cave and then you put the body in there and then you rolled a big stone in front of it so that no one could ransack the grave, wild animals couldn't get in. It was a form of protection. And so these ladies are approaching, they're saying, who's going to roll this away? And but as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. And when they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked. But the angel said, don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was here. But he isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body. Now, go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there, just as he told you before he died. The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered. They said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened. And so we see here that this group of ladies are oriented to a certain reality. The night before, they went out and they purchased the particular spices that were used to disguise the smell of decomposing flesh.
From embalming. Kind of.
As well as a bit of a ritual kind of anointing with oil. And so they were ready. They had fully embraced a certain reality. And that reality was...
that their friend, that Jesus was dead.
Yeah.
That was the reality, despite what he might have said
Well,
to them.
yeah. But they were just, and when
we've seen it.
When someone dies, you can feel a lot of different things.
Yep.
There are moments where you do accept it. This is how it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were also moments for this group of ladies that when they denied it, it can't be true.
Happen. Yeah.
Anger, why is this
unfair.
happening? Guilt, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so as they go out there, they then start to work through the practicalities. And they're saying, well, who's going to move this? What are the practicalities of this reality? And then they get there and they realize that something has happened. They don't know. And in this particular narrative, we're not told. And I think as we move through our lives, when we are confronted with a certain reality, a certain perspective coming to an end, we don't have all the information. We don't know why. We may be still working through the practicalities of how do I do this part of my job? How do I make this part of my relationship work? Who am I in this particular mode? And then we are confronted, bam, this is no longer the reality that I thought it was. And so these women here, what's their response? Well, we see in the scriptures that they are bewildered, they are shocked, that they are quite startled. And there are other versions of this, but on this particular day, we want to just reflect on this group of people's response to this. And I just want to draw on this example as a reference that when it comes to faith, sometimes there's pressure to have it all together. Sometimes there's pressure to know exactly what we need to do because, hey, God is on our side, so everything's okay, all right? And yet here we have clearly an example of a group of people and they are bewildered, they are trembling, they are shocked, they are not sure what to do next. Matter of fact, they are given a role, they're given a task. This angelic being says, go and tell all the disciples. And yet this particular narrative says, but they didn't tell anyone because they were afraid. There is a blip in the timeline. They don't know what they're doing. And we just want to draw on this inspiration and say, when you are having your reality shaken, it's okay. It's okay to be bewildered. It is okay to be confused. It is okay to be disoriented. And yet what we find is that as we're sifting through the remains of a career or the remains of a relationship, there is also an invitation. Because what we see here is that often the people that we thought we were looking to are gone. You know, like these people were leaning on this guy, Jesus. And yet, I want to just connect to another Mary, a Mary who may not have been part of this group. But there was another time when a lady called Mary had experienced loss. And she'd actually lost her brother. And as Jesus moved to comfort her, she actually came out and she said, Jesus, I blame you.
Yeah.
Often when we're going through this disorienting time, it's easy. When you're going through the loss, like we mentioned, of a career or a relationship or someone that's dear to you, it's a very human response to try and blame. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. And then Jesus says, Mary, do you believe in the resurrection? And she gives a pretty cultural response, actually. She says, yes, we do. Because in her time and in her day, most of the people felt that at the end of time, there would be a resurrection of everyone. But then Jesus says these words, which I think are applicable to this situation. They're applicable to you and I right now. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. And I see those words being lived out here, that when we are going through a disorienting and a bewildering situation, when everything that we have depended on, when everything that we have relied on seems to have crumbled, then I want to invite you to believe, to hear those words, I am the resurrection and the life. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. To embrace that. Because there will be moments where Jesus will actually speak. I mean, you shared this morning a different encounter, another Mary. And what was her experience?
At the tomb, when she heard Jesus speak, all she heard was him say her name. And it changed everything in that moment. She was scared. She was wondering what was going on. But then she realized, he's alive. Here is Jesus. And all he said was her name. And I think that's beautiful, because I think if we listen, I think even in our chaos and in the stuff that's hard, that we find bewildering, if we can hear Jesus, I think that provides like maybe an anchor even when the mess isn't cleaned up straight away.
Yeah, and if you're someone who's considering exploring, then I want you to know, regardless of whatever you believe right in this moment, that as you're going through this moment of disorientation, where everything seems to have changed, where your perspective no longer seems to be valid, that Jesus is calling your name. And as you are watching this right now, you may even be able to hear it. Spoken into the chaos, spoken into the bewilderment. That invitation, not to trust on what has been, but actually to take a step of faith and say, okay, Jesus, I'm going to trust you. And for others, there may be a moment where you choose to believe those words that we just talked about, where we, in the middle of our chaos and bewilderment, we choose to say, Jesus, I believe that you are the resurrection, and in the middle of everything falling down, in the middle of this death, that you are the new life, that you are the way forward. So we want to extend to you right now on this Easter Sunday the offer to listen and the offer to experience a new life in the middle of chaos and bewilderment and disorientation. And as you've watched, you may have felt in a mystical way, God is calling your name. You may be choosing right now, in the absence of anything else, choosing to believe Jesus. In this moment, we invite you to say, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you this chaos. I give you my disorientation. I give you my bewilderment. Give me your life. And the one who claims to be the resurrection and life itself will lead you on the next step. Pray with us now. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And for those who prayed that, may you experience the one who is resurrection and life rolled into one. May you, in a mysterious and a transcendent way, experience the essence of who he is, become entangled with the essence of who you are, and may you experience life anew. If that was your choice, we'd love to support you on your next step any way we can. Drop us a line in the comments, send us a DM, and if you're passing through Southwest Sydney, we'd love to hear from you. God bless you.